Well, check out this application of Proverbs 14, verse 8. In a marriage, the wise person gives thought to their ways. My guest has built a whole ministry on what I believe is the biblical key not only to a fulfilling marriage, but relationships in general. Dr. Emerson Eggerichs is founder and president of Love and Respect Ministries. I think many of you are acquainted with this best-selling marriage book. It has sold, I'm sure, over 1.3 million copies. There's a devotional for couples as well, the Love and Respect Experience, a husband-friendly devotional that wives truly love, and so much more. It was not my privilege 3 years ago to sit down with you, Doctor, but today and all this week, we get to unpack something that really couldn't be more timely in this culture. Welcome.
Thank you, Moira.
From Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Exactly. Thank you for having me.
Now, you and your wife, Sarah, wife of 41 years,
yes,
have been doing these conferences really around the world for how many years?
1999.
But none of it would have happened without what we'll call an epiphany. Tell us about it.
Well, I had the privilege of pastoring a church in East Lansing, Michigan, a college town, and the call to that ministry was for me to study the Bible 30 hours a week. And with that privilege, I was able to really focus in on Scripture, and I discovered something in Ephesians 5:33 that I hadn't paid attention to. Ephesians 5:33. Ephesians is one of the books of the Bible. The 5th chapter, the 33rd verse is the summary. To some say it is the greatest treatise in the New Testament on marriage. And there it says, a husband must love his wife, and a wife must respect her husband. And I realized in a college town, academic environment, 45,000 students, that loving a woman was not a debate issue, you know, but the idea of respecting a man. Now that, you know, women say, well, Dr. Emerson, I have to be honest with you, I don't feel any respect for him. It'd be hypocritical for me to show respect when I don't feel it. He's not superior to me. It's dictionary definition of respect. You show respect to your superiors. I'm not inferior to him. I'm not going to be treated like a doormat. And everybody knows you've got to earn respect. And he doesn't deserve respect. He hasn't loved me in meaningful ways. I'm certainly not going to lose a sense of myself and identity. I'm not going to subject myself to emotional abuse. I'm not going to return to male patriarchy and fear male dominance, which I think is really your agenda. But other than these things, Dr. Emerson, I'm really open to hearing
I'm
what
on
you
page
have to say.
with you.
And
so you figured you had a hard sell.
Exactly.
On
that is exactly right. There are all these landmines out there, and yet every man serves and dies for honor. And so the disconnect between,
on that
yes, well, men are motivated. We honor each other. There's this honor code that we live by. So I knew as a male, and having gone to military school for 5 years, I realized, wow, I'm motivated by issues of honor, and yet women were saying, gag me. And so I thought there was this disconnect.
He really wants to be the knight in shining armor.
Well, he does, and he's willing literally to die for her. In fact, one husband said, I love you so much I would die for you. She said, Harry, you keep saying that, but you never do. It's a joke, Moira. You're supposed to laugh at that point.
I was going on to think you never do the things.
Yes.
The things that show that you would go that far.
She says you never die. You never die. You always say you're going to die for me, but you never do. But that attitude that he would sacrifice his life is incredible. And so there is this desire to be that knight in shining armor. And yet when it comes to this idea of respecting a man, there was this fear that women have that I'm going to somehow lose something here. And that's understandable. I've been around this long enough. My own mother and dad had marital conflicts, so I always see women as my mom, and so mom might have this fear. I understand that. But as I got into it, I also have my PhD in family studies. And the University of Washington studied 2,000 couples for 20 years, and they discovered that love and respect are the two key ingredients for successful marriage. So now you have this Best Research Institute telling us that. The Bible said it 2,000 years ago. But my discovery, the epiphany I had, was when I saw this correlation between love and respect. And that was when I had this moment, and I called Sarah, my wife, in to hear what I had just seen. When a wife feels unloved, she tends to react in a way that feels disrespectful to her husband. And when a husband feels disrespected, he tends to react in a way that feels unloving to her. And one
so
of
the two key things each needs.
They end up stepping on each other's
eroded.
air hose, so to speak, as I say. She has a love tank, he has a respect tank, but we're pushing each other off our air hoses and we're standing on the others. Now, we all need love and respect equally. No question about it. She needs R-E-S-P-E-C-T. He needs L-O-V-E. There is no debate about the fact that we need it equally. But the felt need during conflict, Moira, is different. And by that I mean, when we have these heated fellowship moments, there is this tendency for her to filter things through the love grid and him through the respect grid. And we wanted to research that out. So we've asked 7,000 people this question on our own research. When you're in a conflict with your spouse, do you feel unloved at that moment or disrespected? Get this, 83% of the men say they feel disrespected. 72% of the women say they feel unloved. Moira, if you start at 0 and go to the extremes, this is what we call statistically significant. This is as different as night is from day, as pink is from blue, as male is from female. So what happens during a conflict, at a certain point, she begins to feel unloved, he begins to feel disrespected. But here's the deal, she's not trying to be disrespectful. That's not her goal. Her goal is she's feeling unloved, and she's trying to help him understand that he was unloving. She just needs reassurance that he loves her, and that's where her mind's at. And even if she's feeling disrespected, she eventually says, how can you say you love me and treat me disrespectfully? It still comes back to that deeper issue of love. He, on the other hand, he knows she loves him. You ask Harry, hey Harry, does your wife love you? Oh yeah. Harry, yeah. Does she like you? No, not today. So what happens during conflict, he begins to think she's using this topic as another opportunity to send him a message that she doesn't respect him because he fails to be as unloving as she is. So now they spin on what I called the crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, and this baby spins. And good-willed people, not evil-willed people, not ill-willed people, good-willed people are spinning out of control and they're confused. And our campaign is to help them decode.
Well, I was so excited the first time, how many years ago? When was this published?
2004.
2004, just to see this cover. Because I had had an epiphany. Just reading a scripture I'm sure I'd read many times before, and it came with a picture. And I'm going to show you, I don't know if you are familiar with the movie The King and I with Yul Brynner. And Deborah Carr, and I remember even as a child weeping over this movie. How could this strapping, handsome, virile Yul Brynner be dying over a wife's demeaning of him? A wife, it's an English school teacher, she wasn't his wife, disrespecting him. But what I saw was my parents. And for the first time I understood, by that time my dad was gone, and I mean, it was just filled with this desire to help them because I got it now.
Yes.
And I just saw, you know, my father out of the depression where his dad deserted a wife and 6 children. So love to him was workaholism. And a very needy victim of all kinds of abuse, my mother, who needed nurturing and affirmation and acceptance and love. And I saw it like this. You know, they were just missing each other. They loved each other. The tragic irony is that at one point in their marriage, they were dressed for a costume ball. And I'm going to show you the picture. My dad as the king and my mother as Anna. And they truly lived out that conflict that you see in that classic musical. I see the crazy cycle now.
Yes.
My mom, in her needs not being met, would do things that put Dad down, that put a chink in his armor and demeaned him. And it was just the tragic fulfillment of what you have diagrammed and speak into so profoundly.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I think this is where our campaign is to help couples realize at the end of the day, they're both good-willed. She doesn't get up in the early morning thinking of ways to be disrespectful. He doesn't get up earlier to think of ways to be unloving. So how is it that there is this two ships in the night missing each other? There's an honest misunderstanding. What we're helping couples realize is that we tend to deal with conflict differently. 85% of those who stonewall and withdraw is the male. At a certain point in conflict, he'll withdraw. She couldn't imagine withdrawing. But the University of Washington, in their research on these couples, said that's 85%. And his heartbeats get to 99 beats per minute. He's in warrior mode. He doesn't look that way. She looks like she's out of control emotionally, but she knows where she's headed. She's not out of control. Her heartbeats are calm. He's sitting there very stoic, but his heartbeats, 99 beats per minute, you're ready to throw yourself on a hand grenade and die. So what does he have to do? He has to calm down. He has to withdraw, drop it, forget it. You're picking a fight. Well, she's not trying to pick a fight. She's trying to connect. She's trying to resolve the issue by moving toward, we need to talk. But
We're so much more verbal.
Well,
You know,
there is this verbalization.
Let's talk this out.
Exactly. That's how God has wired you. But the University of Washington said she criticizes and complains. Criticize, complain. They watch it in a laboratory. No, that's criticism. Yep, it's complaint. And after a while, what happens, men hear criticism and complaint as contempt for who they are. And no husband feels fond feelings of love and affection in his heart toward a woman he thinks despises who he is as a human being. But in a woman's world, when you withdraw, she sees that as an act of hostility. That's what they said. The women were asked, how do you feel when your husband stonewalls? Act of hostility. What do you men feel when she's criticizing and complaining? They feel it's contemptuous. But here's what's interesting. She does this because she cares, only to be interpreted as contemptuous. He does what he does in his world as a male out of honor. We withdraw, we de-escalate. You're too important to me to fight, and this is no big deal. Let's just drop it, forget it, and move on. Men
She
can
thinks he's
compartmentalize.
not interested in working this problem
Hugely
out.
so.
Doesn't
She
care about the
passes
marriage.
judgment when he's trying to do the honorable thing, and she says, you hate me. So now you have these two good-willed people. He's seeking to do the honorable thing. He's labeled unloving. She's seeking to do the loving thing, and she's labeled disrespectful. So what we're helping couples realize is that both have good hearts. We're not perfect. We're all sinful. We're all selfish. But in the overall marathon of the relationship, we jump on that crazy cycle because we're both trying to do the right thing. She's moving toward him to do the loving thing, but is interpreted as disrespectful. He's seeking to do the respectful thing and is interpreted as unloving. And the minute we begin to give the benefit of the doubt, even though it hurts us, they're stepping on our air hose, it doesn't feel right to any woman for him to withdraw. It doesn't feel right for any man to be criticized and complain against, on an ongoing basis. But what you have to do is come to a point, will I trust this person's heart, or did I marry Hitler's distant cousin?
Do you ever wrestle with God's design?
Oh,
Male, female?
Yes. Well, ultimately, it's a compliment that he's created, because if both of us were the same, one of us is unnecessary, in that sense. But there is this beauty that we have to discover. But yes, we irritate each other. And this is why Paul said in 1 Corinthians 7:28, if you marry, you have not sinned, but you will have trouble. And the context there, earlier he said the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does, and the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. What's he saying? Both have equal authority in the sexual area. Both have equal say. So I remember praying, I said, well, Lord, on Tuesday night, for instance, does he decide they're going to have sex, or does she decide they're not going to have sex? Yes, this inaudible voice said. I said, Lord, well, like when they're older, if he decides they don't want to have sex and she decides that they're going to have, who decides? Yes. I said, Lord, have you designed trouble? Yes. And one of the things that we've got to come to is this realization that we're going to have different preferences. And that doesn't mean that because my preference is right, that you're automatically wrong. That mature people come to a point where we can both be right, but we differ. And this is why we campaign on this slogan, not wrong, just different. And how are we going to do that dance then? Because we're male and female, and we irritate each other, and we're upset. Well, God, why did you make us this
like
way?
this?
Ultimately, I have to trust him that there's a purpose for this, and that those tensions, those troubles, are designed for a deeper purpose.
Well, it's pretty obvious there's lots more to talk about in this challenging dance.
Yes.
That requires love and respect. The love she most desires, the respect he desperately needs. This book is available at our e-store, and you're going to want to be with us all week.